What's causing all this, huh?
Apparently you're the cause of all this, motherfucker. Jim Ross retires? Really? I thought he was already retired. Why would he officially retire from a job he really doesn't have, and the only thing he does with WWE is just occasional appearances? He's affiliated with them a little bit, probably has a Legends contract, and just doesn't really do too much with them at all. So why the need to retire from that? To concentrate on other personal business? I thought that's what you've been doing. Your barbecue sauce is fucking delicious. I just don't get it. Something stinks here, and for once I'm actually inclined to maybe believe some of the crap that I've been reading on the dirt sheets. Well, actually, I don't even read the dirt sheets or the websites. All of you give me this information on Facebook, Twitter, and YouTube. Anytime anything goes down in the wrestling business, I've got 100 of you sending me messages about it on all 3 websites, so I am totally in the loop as it comes to this, and I've read all the different stories and all the different reports, and to be honest with you, it kind of fucking makes sense. Because we watched it. Before I did this commentary, I actually watched a good portion, well, not a good portion, but a few minutes of the big 2K14 panel with Ric Flair and Jim Ross, the whole situation that seems to be the cause of the retirement of Jim Ross. And I gotta tell you, for those of you who've seen it, it's all over YouTube. It is very uncomfortable to watch. You could tell that these guys were hammered, fucking drunk. Jim Ross was too. Jim Ross might not have been Ric Flair drunk, but Jim Ross had a buzz. You could tell as he was talking. Yes, I know he has Bell's palsy and he slurs a little bit anyway, but you could tell he was doing a little more than normal. I still think he held it together, especially in the beginning. And he really didn't seem to me all that bad. But when Ric Flair started talking and things just started trailing off and these guys were just, having a good time, to me, I didn't look at this and see a bunch of guys that were behaving like kids. I saw a bunch of guys that were behaving like professional wrestlers. Think about it. Anytime you get a group of wrestlers together in this type of sit down, how many times do you have a panel like this in front of shareholders and big company executives? Usually wrestlers are doing this type of shit in front of conventions of fucking mark fans where you got the little fucker standing up going, "It's still real to me, damn it." You almost have to be wasted to deal with shit like that. And I think this is a really perfect example of just how different the business is and how the WWE just has completely different priorities now. This would not have even been an issue 15 years ago. You wouldn't have even heard anything about it. This would have been normal behavior. But nowadays, the WWE is so tight-assed for all the reasons that I've outlined in the last 3 years on these commentaries. And they are such a big, mega giant company that all sorts of shit that would have never mattered years ago all of a sudden is huge deal now. And I was watching a lot of this, and it seemed to me like the audience and everybody was kind of enjoying it. I mean, there was a lot of laughs. Jim Ross is a great fucking comedian. People don't give him credit enough for how funny he can be with some of the stories that he tells, especially about, his colleagues and fellow wrestlers and life on the road and, the wrestling days. I mean, he's fucking hilarious, and it's just too bad that these guys, I don't think it really sunk in that they've got to, they almost have to, bite their tongue on some of this stuff because it's not a shoot interview and they have to be careful what they say, and the drinks were flowing and they had a nice buzz on, and you know how you are. You guys, all those of you who drink, you know what happens when you get a little wasted. You say things, your just inhibitions go away. I don't really think anybody was being rude or disrespectful or belligerent or anything like that. I just think that they were being drunk and they weren't really following point and they were just acting the way drunk people act. And I actually think they were acting a lot better. They weren't trying to fight anybody or being assholes or anything like that. Ric Flair was just shooting off at the mouth like he's been doing ever since he was 28 years old. So what? Ric Flair said John Cena's a big drinker. Good, the fucker deserves to drink. Look how goddamn hard he works. At least he doesn't have a whole beer keg funneled up his ass like Kurt Angle does or some other guys. So just like I do in all my commentaries, I'm going to do my very best to look at both sides of this. I can see why some fans and some people would be furious about this. Part of me is too, because I want to say to the WWE, lighten the fuck up. Could you not remember? Is the WWE that fucking stupid that they don't remember all the horrible shit that they have done to this guy? So Jim Ross had a couple of drinks before he went on stage in front of company executives. Is that as bad as pulling ham sandwiches and Christmas trees out of his ass? Is that as bad as putting on a cowboy hat and mocking his Bell's palsy, an affliction that almost killed him and has been affecting him his whole life? Or is that even as bad as the other fucking countless amount of times the WWE has completely and totally shit on Jim Ross in some form or another? They have always treated him like a piece of garbage, and he's been a company man all the way through it. He does it for the good of the business. He understands. He tells the fans to chill out. So what? They made fun of me. Big deal. It made for good TV. I'm a wrestling character, and I'm subject to that, and it's fair game when it comes to wrestling, so chill the fuck out. If he was fine with it, we should be fine with it. But I always thought the WWE just disrespected him on purpose sometimes, and it was highly fucking annoying. And after all these years of service and all the years that Jim Ross has given to the wrestling business, he's acting just like he always has. He did nothing differently than he ever has in his life, but because the business is different, I don't even think that he was really aware of it. And a few too many cocktails and the craziest motherfucker in the history of wrestling, Ric Flair, sitting a couple seats down from him, was just too much for the WWE to handle, and now they're fucking acting like a bunch of pussies, and they gotta fire and let go everybody. Ric Flair completely killed his chances, apparently, of ever coming back and doing anything with them, and it's kind of sad. His son just died. The WWE was there for him. Stephanie and Triple H went to Reed's funeral. Ric Flair put himself in a horrible spot too, because now he's got his lifelong friend Triple H, got to say, hey buddy, I'm sorry, we can't bring you back. They don't want you. You made an ass of yourself, and I just can't. My hands are tied. I can't do anything for you. So Ric Flair lost out on his opportunity. Good, go the fuck home and retire, and try not to die in the next couple of years. Jim Ross, honestly, for him, he's better off. Fuck them. If they don't want you, fuck them. Jim Ross is no spring chicken either. He's getting very old. He has had health problems for as long as I can remember him being in the wrestling business. I would like for him to take it easy. He's got no need to go on the road and represent these assholes anymore. Fuck them. The fact that they're forcing him out, however, is kind of annoying to me because I don't understand that. Was that really that big a deal? Jim Ross could have been planning his retirement already. That's fine. But I think if something like that was going to happen, it would happen after, WrestleMania 30. That's going to be a monumental WrestleMania. So for them to announce and go out of their way to announce that JR is completely, severing ties with WWE makes me think that they called him up there and said, look, you've given so much to the business. You are respected. You are an institution in the wrestling business. We could never, ever, ever fire you. But we've decided we don't want anything to do with you anymore. We want to terminate our contract, and we would like you to retire. We're never going to humiliate you and future endeavor you and, slap you on the website and make everybody think that we kicked you to the curb. Why don't you just retire? This happens a lot in sports. A lot of coaches will resign so instead of getting fired because they know they would get fired. And so the team says, hey, we're going to let you go. Why don't you resign? You can leave the way you want and go out with your head up. You've given us so much. That's the least we could do for you to spare you the humiliation of being fired or anything like that. So seems like they did that for Jim Ross. Which honestly, deep down, I don't think Jim Ross gives a shit. He's tweeting, he's fine, he'll be just fine. So given what business we're in, I would think that it's an almost certainty that one day, someday in the future, we will see Jim Ross on Raw again. Now let's look at the other side, to the fans that are freaking out, typing in all capital letters all over message boards, all over the internet, just ripping the WWE apart for what they're doing to Jim Ross. Shut up. JR will be fine. Life goes on. You knew this is the way the WWE is. This is the type of shit they do now. Guys are being fined for blading and pile drivers, okay? It is a completely different fucking business. Everybody is so goddamn uptight, and society is in general, and the WWE is following suit, and all sorts of shit that would have never mattered years ago matter now. You guys, I'm sure, can think of a lot of examples like this that have already happened in the past few years. The Abraham Johnson, or whatever the fuck his name is, when he made the Kobe Bryant comment, and all other sorts of crap that goes on here and there that guys get released for, and you think to yourself, fucking really? That shit would have never happened in the 80s, and it definitely wouldn't have happened in the Attitude Era. If anything, they would have given a guy a push for doing some of that shit. The wrestling business went from Miss America to a strung-out Vegas prostitute raped in a ditch. I fully expect nonsense like this to happen from time to time, and I'm pretty much numb to it. So I don't think there's any sense on freaking out when you got Jim Ross blogging and tweeting, hey, it's cool, I'm fine, I'm just moving on with my life, no big deal. He'll wake up tomorrow and have breakfast and take his gigantic morning shit just like he does every day of his life. It makes no sense at all to overreact about this. This wasn't a big deal. This is a figure in WWE that isn't even really around that much. It's not like they're robbing us of him. It's not like he's on Raw every week sitting in Michael Cole's chair. It's Michael Cole doing that now. He's taken over. He's the new fucking Jim Ross. So as fans, we're not going to be missing out on anything. Jim Ross is probably not going to be missing out on anything either, because now he gets to avoid what I'm sure are miserable trips to Connecticut, plus flying all over the country, doing PR work for them from time to time. He can sit back, relax at home, retire in Oklahoma, go to all the OU football games, sit in his backyard with a beer and eat ribs lathered in his fucking barbecue sauce for the rest of his life. That's what Jim Ross deserves to do. Now, as far as Jim Ross, the man, goes, I will tell you, he is the Shawn Michaels of commentary. There has never been anyone that has ever come close to reaching the status that he has as a commentator. He has the unbelievable ability to be the best play-by-play man I've ever heard, and also the best storyteller I've ever heard. When I think back to his early days in the UWF and the NWA and WCW and even the WWF when he first got there, he was just amazing to listen to. He was very exciting. He helped make the match more exciting. I remember 20 years ago, one of the first pay-per-views of Jim Ross's WWF career, King of the Ring, the very first King of the Ring, the one Bret Hart won. I don't know if that King of the Ring would have been as great as it was had it not been for Jim Ross's commentary. I love Gorilla, but if they would have put him in there or Vince instead, I don't think the pay-per-view would have been as good. He was still doing mostly play-by-play at the time, and I remember the Bret Hart Mr. Perfect match, how great he was, because as a WWF fan, those fans hadn't heard this type of commentary yet. It was just always Gorilla Monsoon and fucking Bobby Heenan bickering with each other, or Vince McMahon, oh, what a maneuver, and thinking the match is over with every near fall. It almost seemed like they had no idea what they were doing, and then Jim Ross comes in there and actually starts telling the fans what the fuck's going on. He's not jibber-jabbering with Bobby all the time. There's a little bit of that. There has to be. Color guy has to do that, and he was perfect. He had the perfect balance at that pay-per-view. And he did that in WCW too. If he was going to talk to the guy sitting next to him and they were going to have a little disagreement, it was quick. It didn't fucking last forever. They didn't harp on it. They didn't go on. Bobby Heenan and Gorilla could go on for 2 or 3 minutes on the same fucking argument. Jim Ross is like, okay, whatever, moving on. He was just so good. There's just so many great legends. When I think of all of their moments, their title victories, their careers, most of them I hear Jim Ross's voice in the background. And to be fair, the list of great commentators is honestly in wrestling not that long. I can only think of 2 guys that I would put on my Mount Rushmore, and that's JR and Soli. There's been good ones. Joey Styles, Mike Tenay, Heenan and Gorilla were fucking hilarious, and maybe a couple others, but really, Jim Ross is in a class by himself. And I actually credit a lot of my lack of interest in the business in the past, several years to the fact that I don't hear Jim Ross's voice anymore. That has a lot to do with it. When Jim Ross went away and it was Michael Cole, and I'm a Michael Cole defender, there's no reason to shit on this guy. He's here, he ain't going anywhere, you better fucking get used to him. But still, so many years and years upon years of memories, all, are consistent with Jim Ross on commentary during a lot of that, and to not hear that anymore, I'm still not used to it. How long has it been? It's been a long time since Jim Ross, has not been on every Raw. He's pretty much been in and out, and it's been a while now, but I'm still not used to, just Cole and King, and now JBL or whatever. So to me, it's just still a little strange not to have him around. He meant the world to me in my wrestling memory, that's for sure. I don't think I would have enjoyed wrestling as much as I did had it not been for Jim Ross. So I hope this story doesn't become too much of a circus. Everybody's begging me to come up here and do a commentary about it, so there you go. I can't claim to know the truth or what's best or what's right or wrong in this situation. All I can do is just give my random thoughts on it. So if you liked what I said, high five. If you didn't like what I said, fuck off. And to Jim Ross, I would just like to say thank you. You are my favorite announcer of all time, and that will never, ever, ever change. One thing I can be certain of is that the wrestling business will never produce another guy like Jim Ross that can narrate what you're watching the way he did. Jim Ross, I love you. Everybody listening to this loves you. And I just want to tell you from the bottom of my heart, thank you. And to the rest of you, I'll catch you after Night of Champions.